Alright, so today I want to talk to you about the increase in human population and specifically the effects that has on the environment. So humans harm the environment in many different ways, such as air pollution, toxic waste, or simply destroying ecosystems for resources. But something people may overlook is how our large increase in human population could be negatively impacting the environment. So to start off, I went and found some numbers on population size and growth rate so you can have an idea on how much we are actually growing and how large our population actually is. I went and got these numbers at the Population Reference Bureau and found that there's been a huge growth, absolutely huge growth in human population in the last 50 or so years. So let's talk numbers now. Starting out in 1950, we had 2.5 billion people worldwide. That rose all the way to 6.5 billion in 2005, and now we've already reached 7.3 billion people worldwide. That is a huge growth rate. In the last 60 or so years, that means we've almost tripled our population. And with that in mind, let's now talk about the problems that we'll see while facing this huge increase in population growth. I went and found a review article by Joel E. Cohen called Human Population Grows Up. And this article lists some of the problems we're going to see while facing this huge increase in human population and population growth. So the article starts by reiterating what I've already told you about how huge our population growth has been, and then goes into talk about how unsustainable this growth is and the problems that we are making by having this growth. So first off, he talks about land and food use. In his article, he notes an assessment done by Mathis Wackernagel on land and resource use done by humans. They estimated humans used approximately 70% of the global biosphere's capacity in 1961, and that rose to 120% in 1999. That meaning we used more land and resources than were currently sustainable by the Earth. The article goes on to talk about how growing cities are affecting agriculture and other resources negatively. Because cities are often built in regions of good agricultural productivity or are on very productive coastal areas, when they do expand, much of that land or resources are used up and lost or inaccessible. And on top of that, because there's less agricultural area around the cities, rural agriculture is now expected to increase and produce exponentially more products to keep up with demand. And that leads me to the big issue I want to talk about that we're going to be dealing with increasing human population. And that's food, and the need for more food and the need to produce more food. Now this obviously isn't the only problem we're going to see with population increase. There's problems like energy consumption increase, there's problems like waste production increase, there's problems like pollution increase, but there's definitely not enough time in this video to talk about all these. So for the purposes of this video, I'll only be focusing on those two aspects of population increase. Now, to get on to the meat of the video. So far I've only told you that there is a problem, but I really haven't explained how the problem came about and what are the ramifications of this problem, like how it will affect the environment and such. So now I'm going to get into the details of the problems. So the first thing we're going to talk about is food, and specifically we're going to talk about agriculture, because agriculture is one of the main ways that humans produce food. This article, called Agricultural Intensification and Ecosystem Properties, talks about the problems that have arisen from increasing demand for agriculture. The article starts off by noting how the amount of cultivated land has increased by 466% in the last 200 years, and how in the last few decades, in order to keep up with demand on less land, humans have begun using methods to increase crop yields. This ties into both how increasing population has increased land use and how it's increased the overconsumption of resources. The methods I'm referring to in this article are what they call intensification, which includes using chemical fertilizers, pesticides, high-yielding crop varieties, and irrigation to increase the yield from agriculture. There are some problems with these practices though. First off, they make the land unsustainable in the long term, and they have many environmental consequences. The reason the land isn't sustainable in the long term is because these practices lead to increased erosion and lower soil fertility over time, which decreases the efficiency of this land. And more important than the sustainability of the land, the environmental consequences are extremely large. The use of fertilizers and fertilizer runoff often leads to pollution of groundwater, and more importantly than that, eutrophication of lakes and rivers. And this is the real problem with agriculture and using fertilizer to increase crop yield. Eutrophication of lakes and rivers has huge problems on the environment, like decreasing biodiversity. And on top of that, we also have to think about pesticides and herbicides used in agriculture, which can often run off into lakes and rivers and have many harmful effects on the wildlife there. So now that I've talked to you about agriculture, I'm also going to quickly talk to you about fisheries, because fisheries are another huge source of food for humans. There have been many cases in the past where humans have overfished areas to the point of near extinction, and now that the population is rising and the need for food is even greater, this will only increase unless practices are put in place to stop it. According to the World Wildlife Fund, overfishing has become a huge problem in the last 50 years, with more than 85% of the world's fisheries being pushed to or even beyond their biological limits. And it's not only fish that we are overharvesting, there's also things like oysters and clams and other aquatic life that humans are overharvesting. Now, the obvious environmental impacts of this are going to be loss of fish and loss of other aquatic species because they're either going extinct or being threatened. And that'll also lead to loss of biodiversity, as is stated in this article here. This article here puts overexploitation as one of the top 5 causes of decreases in biodiversity in freshwater ecosystems. And that's not the only problem with overharvestation. I have another article, this one here, that states the other problems with overfishing. The article actually states that overfishing can lead to eutrophication of the water body and sometimes outbreaks of diseases. Now, if you just think about that for a minute, that means both agriculture and fishing, two of humans' biggest sources of food, both lead to eutrophication of lakes and rivers. That means that as our population increases and our need for food increases, there will be even more problems coming up with eutrophication of lakes and rivers, which will also lead to more decreases in biodiversity. Now, these problems are obviously not due solely to population growth, but the increase in population growth has definitely been a huge factor in increasing these problems more than they already have been. And like I said before, these aren't the only problems that are going to come up with population increase. I'm obviously not going to talk about all these problems in this video because that takes way too long for just one video. But I am going to leave you with a question. Just how much bigger do you think our population can get before we reach carry capacity? Before we reach the point where we can no longer sustain the amount of people on our planet? Thanks for watching.